Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on joint custody makes it worse. Question mark. I obviously don't agree, and that's typically all the videos that have a question mark at the end of them. I don't agree. But I do want to talk about it because it's actually a good question. Why do people, and I think attorneys and judges too, think, not all of them, just some of them, that joint custody makes it worse? When we had the tender years doctrine prior to all of these new laws that came out and created a presumption of joint custody, things were easier. And just because they were easier doesn't mean they were working the right way. And the way that I think is best to explain where this idea comes from is that most cases in the old days resolve themselves. I think that is the gist of what people are complaining about, whether it's a judge or a parent, when it comes to joint custody. There is a lot of high conflict discussion now that really wasn't about back then. There really wasn't a concept of high conflict child custody back then because the court picked a winner and a loser, and the winner got the kids and the loser just got visitation. I mean, there still were some anomalies, but now there's more of this realization and recognition of these high conflict child custody situations, a lot of which, and maybe even most of which, are joint custody situations. And people are frustrated, judges are frustrated. I think what was happening before is that people didn't fight these cases because they knew what the outcome would be. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the child wasn't subjected to abuse and neglect. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, this goes right into what I discussed in the video. End of filings is not end of abuse. Just because there are less filings and less litigation doesn't mean that the child isn't being abused and neglected. It just means, for whatever reason, the parents aren't coming back. Sometimes it's because the issues were resolved, and sometimes somebody just gave up and they just decided the court system wasn't going to help, so I give up. And the judges and the attorneys and a lot of times outsiders think, oh, well, everything's working great now because they're out of court, when really there's nothing great about what that child is going through. So back before, the court would pick the winner and the loser, and based on tender years, it was the mom, for the most part, that won, and the dad, for the most part, that lost. And because there was this understanding for all these years, people really didn't go to court that much. They just knew what the outcome was going to be, and they signed the documents and they moved on. There may have been some battles in court, but it may have been about more ancillary things like, what's the exact dollar amount of the child support? What's the alimony? What is the visitation schedule going to be? And that kind of stuff still probably got a little incendiary, but it seems like things are a lot worse now because of joint custody. The thing is, just because there was an understanding back then, which is mom got custody and dad didn't, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what was in the best interest of the child. So in situations where a mother maybe was abusive, the father just probably thought to himself, you know what, she's not a criminal and she's not on drugs. She's just a mean, nasty, mean-spirited, woman that's causing all kinds of harm to our children, but I can't prove anything like that. Nobody's going to listen to that. And so he would just walk away because that's just how it worked. Mom got custody, dad didn't, the end. And so in situations where the dad was abuser, that was great for the child. In situations where the mom was the abuser, not such a good situation. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't really a fight because nobody thinks there really can be a fight. So now there's these joint custody situations, and now there's more fighting. And so I think even though it frustrates the parents and it frustrates the court system, just because they're not used to the situation doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Now a lot more work has to be done. Now the court actually has to find out who's the abuser. Now, and I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, it's both of them. That's just a cop-out. It's not always both of them. And I talk about this in the video Two Bad Parents, and I also talk about this in the video High Conflict Incompetence. It's like the system went from the tender years doctrine, where there was this understanding, mom wins, dad loses, period, to all these new cop-outs, all these new flippant, forget it, they're just both, they are at each other's throats, who cares, you can't do anything about it. And it's like, no, you have to look into it and find out. A lot of times there is something to it, and I'm not going to talk about it in this video because of those 2 other videos that I already mentioned. I already go into a lot of details with the video 2 Bad Parents and with the video High Conflict Incompetence. All I wanted to do with this video is explain that the idea that high conflict or that joint custody is a problem just because now there's more litigation completely misses the point. Litigation in and of itself isn't a problem. Abusive litigation practices are. Win at all costs attorneys are. Wing it judges are. Wing it lawyers are. Those are all video topics, by the way. If you haven't seen them yet, please watch all those videos. But in and of itself, litigation, without anything else to really go into the details, is not the problem. And maybe in some ways the problem is that the judges just don't have enough time to do the job that we expect them to do. Maybe they don't have enough funding. Maybe they don't have enough support. Hopefully it's not just that they're lazy or that they don't care, even though with some, I do sometimes think that that's the case. And I talk about that in the video, Good Judge, Bad Judge. And please, guys, when I mention a video, please watch it because, I have sort of sound bites as to what I mean with those videos, but each of those videos has a lot of detail behind it, and I think about all the different angles with those videos. And so there's more to it than just, oh, well, we have bad judges all over the place. I go into a lot of detail with Good Judge, Bad Judge. I think I got the message across with this video that this presumption of joint custody, it's a relatively new thing. It's frustrating parents, it's frustrating judges, it's frustrating lawyers. And the reasons why is because now everyone has to do all this work that back then nobody had to do. You could just say, hey, I'm the mom, I win. Back then it was simple, and now it's complicated. And it's more complicated because I feel like the system wants to find out what's best for the kids in principle. And we just have to get from in principle to in reality, and kind of get people used to the idea that since those sort of automatic pathways are turned off now, we're going to have to actually, all of us really, not even just the lawyers and the judges, but even the parents, we're going to have to get used to the idea of figuring out how to put together a presentation for the court. You can't just walk into court and say, believe me. And when you walk out and lose because you didn't get believed, say the system sucks and it's evil, which is, I think that's kind of discussed in the video, It's Your Job to Take Action. So that's kind of the end of this video. I hope that this video was useful to a lot of my viewers. It seems like a lot of these videos lately are really just references to a bunch of other videos, but sometimes these videos can kind of be the glue that kind of connects all of these different principles and topics together, and this is just another one of those videos. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.